Hi, Blastpop here. Today is the finish of my first scenario, this invasion in the Korean War. Now, I just completed this, and it's been a long time since I've played this, probably in the neighborhood of 25, 30 years until today. And had a good relearning scenario. Played a solitaire, and I made a number of obvious mistakes in my mind with the Americans and the UN forces. The North Koreans are the yellow tinted counters. The Americans there holding Pusan did an invasion here, reinforced, and I overcommitted the U.S. forces. I should have spent a little more time more carefully looking at the victory conditions, although I'm sure it might not have made that much difference. This ended up becoming a North Korean victory with 40 victory points, which, again, is a decisive victory. I overcommitted the UN forces, tried to slow down the UN forces with my 1st Infantry Division that I had available to me up here at the river line. And they retreated back, but like so many ants, the North Koreans surrounded and harried the division all the way back to the south. I could have kept more victory points if I had full-strength U.S. infantry divisions at the end of the game and more regiments. I lost 1 or 2 regiments during the course of the game. Kind of made a bit of a difference. I should have kind of focused on Pusan like they did historically, establishing a perimeter around the town or city, and that just didn't come to fruition. And North Koreans just kept the pressure up the entire way. North Koreans received a favorable number of reinforcements. They receive reinforcements from this table right here, the reinforcement table, and only one turn did they not get something, and most of the time it seemed like they also got an infantry division along with the A result, which is an armored unit as well. You can see some of the armored units on the board, and they kept them reasonably intact. The dead pile for the South Koreans was fairly substantial. And then you see a infantry regiment and a tank unit as well was lost. And this is along with the Marines and some North Korean divisions, so they did not get a victory scot-free. Knowing that the Americans could invade, they reinforced some of the local ports. Americans did land down here, down in the southwest corner of the peninsula. So they garrisoned that. And so they won a victory. So I guess the U.S. decided to pack up and go home based on the results of this scenario. Really enjoyable. Had a good time with it. I found out that you really need to stock your supply if you have any in offensive action in place. Now, given the start of the game, with the initial opening invasion and special rules, the North Koreans get an offensive going around, set up and going for free, which is fine. And then starting on turn 3, you have to start rolling for supply and working your depots. And you can see the 2 depots at the end of the game are staring at each other across the front lines, the American Pusan, and further north, the North Korean depot. They both had limited supply, which basically within 10 supply movement points, they're allowed to attack at full strength. So the offense is already going nicely for the North Koreans, and they don't need a lot of extra supply to keep the pressure on the Americans. And the Americans did some good moves in the game. They built some fortifications along the way, but foolishly overcommitted to attacks at different points to try to take back certain ports and cities and stuff to get more victory points. And it probably would have been better off just holding on to full strength divisions and building up defenses and going from improved positions to fortifications. Another interesting thing I found is the best place, at least in the first scenario, is to introduce the North Korean reinforcements at Wonsan and not further north at Pyongyang, because it's just easier to get down the peninsula and ultimately is important to keeping the pressure up on Busan. And again, kind of a learning scenario, but this is a great scenario, the first scenario. I mean, it not only does it set you up for the campaign and other scenarios because it introduces things in a bite-sized way, but it is legitimately an interesting scenario on its own. It has its own merits. Very good. I played a quick run through of the first couple turns, and then realized I made a number of errors. And then this is the version that I finally videoed. And it's not a hard game. It's just you have to pay. There's a lot of little details. And one of the interesting things about this is there could have been like more notes and helpful indicators on the charts and tables. But that was 1986, this classic edition. I really like the classic edition. Not only is it a Belkowski game, it's a victory game, but it has a certain air about it, a certain, victory game at the time, in my mind, was sort of the premier game company. And, it's all nice. Now, I like this edition because it's got a nice, smaller footprint. Even when I was younger and played this, a lot of times I just played the one map scenarios because as a kid, I didn't have a lot of extra room to set up a second map. But now, I mean, I can set up a couple maps fairly easily, but anything more than that, I generally avoid, because usually, in addition to bigger maps and more of them, it leads to longer play times just by the very nature of the situations depicted in a more complex situation when you have a bigger game map play area. So this is ideal. I really like the graphics with this edition, the first edition, and I'm quite happy with it. And although my eyes are getting older, everything is clean and crisp, and even though this wasn't Redmond Simonson, the people who did this game had Redmond Simonson's graphics expertise and used it wisely. So, everything's clean, crisp, well presented, and is a joy to play. And once you play enough of this, especially once you start using the command modifications charts and supply charts and you get familiar with it, the game moves smartly along, plays really nicely, and is definitely worthy of an addition to most game collections. If you have any interest at all in the Korean War or the early post-World War II sort of Cold War situation. So anyway, this has been Blastpop. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.